FM Arts Centre.
Good afternoon and welcome to Writing on Air 2024 here at Chapel FM Arts Centre up in Studio 3. We're on the second day. It's already been plenty of activity and wonderful broadcasting, and I'm really looking forward to the next thing we have on here in our radio theatre. And a warm welcome to the audience and to a listening audience and to a watching audience. I can't believe I only met these two wonderful people so recently. When they came to my writing group on a Wednesday. I'm so glad I did, because they're thoroughly involved now, and that's the way it should be. So I'm going to introduce Len and Ruth. Big round of applause, please.
So before we start, a little announcement, and that's to do with my voice. Sometimes I run out of air as I talk, and then I start talking, but I'll be back, okay? So don't worry. And sometimes I start loud, and then my voice goes down and down and down and down. If that happens, just wave, and I'll turn the volume up again. Thank you, that's my announcement.
There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy. They say he travelled very far over land and sea. A little shy, but very wise was he. And then one day, one magic day, he came my way, and as we talked of many things, fools and kings, this he said to me: the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return.
Well, actually, it's you that said that to me.
So, there are 3 candles here, and that is because there are 3 people in this relationship. There's me.
There is me.
And there is him. And there is us.
So I'll start. In my end is my beginning. And I may get quite emotional as I say this. Ignore it. So my beginning is the death of my first wife, Linda, in April 2000. We had been together for 37 years. We studied side by side. We worked together. We traveled together. We had 2 children together. And then she died. It all finished. My children and their partners loved her, like I did. And we couldn't face giving her body to an undertaker. So we buried her ourselves. Second week of April 2000 was a horrible, rainy, windy, cold week. We dug her grave. We put her body in. We covered her over. And then we went for a holiday Crazy, isn't it? We went to Derbyshire, which was her favorite place. And the weather changed, the sun came out, the grass was green, the lambs were skipping. We spent a week celebrating her. Then my children went back to their homes. I went back to work as a GP. And it was work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep. Life has lost its savor. But 3 months after she died, a very close friend of ours, Phil, phoned me saying, "Len, I'm running a ceilidh. Will you come?" What? I am no dancer, and especially not at a time like this. I was about to give him a piece of my mind, and then I felt as though Linda is telling me, "Go, live." And I went. I walked into the hall. Phil was at the entrance collecting monies, and then he waved to somebody in the audience saying, Ruth, come and meet Len." And he said to me, "Len, come and meet Ruth." And so we met and we danced. And she was a graceful dancer. She still is. But it wasn't the dancing, it was the way that she would connect with me. Her eyes would look into mine whenever, whenever they could. And I found it so good. It reminded me of a song that I first came across when I was 7 years old in Tajikistan. It was a Russian pop song about black eyes, not the English type of black eyes, the continental type of dark eyes. So let me sing it to you. Очи, sorry. Очи черные, очи страстные, очи жгучие и прекрасные, как люблю я вас.
Len, I think that's enough.
Как боюсь я вас, знать, увидев вас, я в недобрый час. Dark eyes, beautiful eyes, burning eyes, passionate eyes. How I love you, how I fear you. I rue the day we met. So that was my first sight of Ruth.
Well, of course I remember that dance, but what I remember even more is about 3 months later, I went on a first date with Len. Now, at the time, I had been single for 12, 13 years, a long time, so I was surprised to be on any date. Now, at the time, my fantasy of a date was somebody who's a very sharp dresser, a good head of hair, very colourful, quite witty. And what I found was I was on a date with my mother's fantasy of a date for me. A lot older. He was bald. He was a doctor. And as for colour, he wore colours that like suck colour, like mud, like beige. But there was something about him. And again, it's the eyes. Very compassionate eyes, very kind, very deep, and very wise. Now, this was our first date, so I said, we need to get to know each other. Maybe let's tell our life story of the first 18 years. And so he said,
Yes.
He said yes. So, okay, I went first, and I was born in Newcastle upon Tyne in 1952. The first generation after the war, into a Jewish family. My mother was a dressmaker, and she worked days. And my father was a telephone operator, and he worked nights. And somehow, they had 3 children. I had an elder sister called Hazel, and that's when tragedy struck our family. When she was 8 and I was 3.5, she was killed in a road accident. And my younger sister, Cherry, was born very soon after that. So I had the strange thing of being the youngest and then suddenly the oldest. And then I went to school, I did a lot of music, and time passed, and at the age of 18, I left to go to university. So I said, now it's your turn, Len. And he started with this sentence I'll never forget.
So I was born in 1937 in Kraków, in Poland.
Well, nothing showed on my face. I didn't say anything, but in my head I went, oh my goodness, what a time and place for a little Jewish boy to be born. And then there's many, many stories, because anybody who survived the war, there are many stories. And these stories went from Kraków in Poland, to the Ukraine, to the Soviet Union, to Siberia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, then to Poland after the war, and then to Czechoslovakia, and then back to Poland, and then to Israel, and then to Ethiopia, and then to Kenya. And at this stage, he's 15 years old. And at the age of 18, he came to England to go to university.
So it's me again. What do I do?
It's definitely you again, Len. Definitely. About the age differences.
Ah, of course. I forgot. So, yeah, that first date. Bloody hell, there's 15 years between us. She's just 48. I am 63. Do I start a relationship? Do I start baby snatching? One day, she will have an old man dribbling that she will have to look after. No. But somehow I couldn't let go. And so we stayed together. And we loved and we laughed. And she had some funny ways of evaluating me. And I remember walking once into her house. She had a conservatory. In the conservatory, she had a long settee. And on the settee were sitting 7 witches, I kid you not. They didn't wear witches' uniforms, but there they were, 1, 2, side by side. And I walked in, and they said, good afternoon, Len, quite formally, and they started asking me questions. Personal questions, searching questions. I didn't know what that was about. And when each of them had a go at me, they ushered me out. I still don't know what was happening. Was I being introduced to her coven? Was I being interviewed for a job? I still don't know.
So, yeah, for about 3 years, he tried to get rid of me. And I wouldn't go. And what I would say was, we have this moment. I'm not going to sacrifice this moment for something that might happen in the future. So no, I'm not going anywhere. And there was loving, and there was fighting, and a lot of laughter. And I can remember hearing his key in the door as he came to my house. And I would run and hide. And he'd walk in and go, okay, where is she this time? And he'd find me underneath the table. And he'd join me. And we'd sit there and giggle. Just like that. And I knew this was a good man. There were challenges. He has 2 children, and they have partners, and they wouldn't meet me, they wouldn't have anything to do with me for over a year. And I was very patient. Of course, their mother had died, but I wasn't passive. So if they came to visit him in his house, I'd make a big bowl, a big pot of borscht, beetroot soup, and I'd stir a spell into it and send it up. So that was the first 3 years, and after 3 years, there was a wedding, a chasana, a Jewish wedding. And I can remember walking into the hall with my best friend on one side and my sister on the other. And in the middle is the chuppah, the canopy under which Jewish couples get married. And around in the hall, and there's some people in the audience who were there, were my friends and my family. And I walked up to Len, who was underneath the chuppah with his friends. And the ceremony started with a traditional circling. I circled 3 times round Len. He circled 3 times round me. And together we circled once around the chuppah. And then the ceremony starts. And as well as blessings, in the center of a Jewish wedding is the ketubah. That's here. This is the contract. The legal contract where we make promises to each other, and we wrote our own version of it. And the bit I want to share with you today, and we still read this to each other regularly, one of them says, I promise to do everything within my power to permit you to become the person you are yet to be.
I promise to do everything within my power to permit you to become the person you are yet to be.
And of course, you know the ketubah. We have the person who painted it here. And then, what you might have seen in films is take the glass, wrap it in a napkin, put it on the ground, and stamp on it. And everybody shouts, Mazel Tov! So can I have this?
Mazel tov.
And that's when the party starts. And in a Jewish wedding, the couple who are getting married are treated like royalty. They are entertained, they're made to laugh, there are games, there are songs, there are dances. There's play and joy and happiness right up into the evening. So shall we have one more? One more?
Mazel tov.
There is a very famous rabbi in the 18th century in what is now the Ukraine, called Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. And he's well known for his wisdom, but also as a storyteller. And there's a song from his words that go, "The whole world is a very narrow bridge. The most important thing is not to be afraid." And if you want to join me, because some of you will know it, goes like this. Kol holam kulo geshet ar meod, geshet ar meod, geshet ar meod. Kol holam kulo geshet ar meod, geshet ar meod. V'haika, v'haika, lo lefauchet klal. V'haika, v'haika, lo lefauchet klal. Lai, 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 la, lai, la, lai. Lie, 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 lie. So the most important thing is not to be afraid. Daring to dare.
So, העיקר זה לא לפחד. And I don't know what motivated me at that point in my life, but I was ready for challenges. And I thought back to living in villages in Tajikistan, in Uzbekistan, and to my father having turned from pharmacist to being the village doctor. And I was really just curious. What is it like to be a village doctor? What would I find? How would I cope? How would I cope with living in a poor village? And then I thought, yeah, why not? Just go and do it. You've already lived in a poor village. You've already taken water from an irrigation ditch for our drinking. You have shut in an old building. You have shut in the maize fields. You have walked barefoot. So let's just do it. Let's see what it feels like. So I put my name down on a volunteer's website, and I got replies. I had replies from Ecuador. I had replies from India. And I ended with so many gifts from both those countries. I want to share just two of them with you. One is from Ecuador. So one day, a few young people, around 18 years old, came to me and said, "Dr. Len, we are going up the mountains." Oh, I forgot to tell you. The village in Ecuador was on the slopes of the Andes. So if I look towards the Andes, there was an infinity of slopes going up and eventually up to the snows. And there were streams coming down. And there were suspension bridges everywhere. So they came and said, will you join us? Will you come up to our beauty spot? I said, yes, of course I will. So we went. We went up one of the valleys, past orioles singing, past bromeliads hanging from the trees, lianas hanging from the trees, the smells of the forest, the sounds of hundreds of different birds that I will never be able to say the names of, and we go up and up. And the valley turns from a broad valley into a gorge. And then the gorge becomes just full of water. But we're still going up somehow. Just to give you a picture of where we were, has anybody here been up Gordale Scar? Yes, you have, thank you. So Gordale Scar is a waterfall. But to get into the valley above Gordale Scar, you just climb up the waterfall. Now imagine the waterfall hundreds of times longer than Gordale Scar. That is where we had to go up. So up and up we climb, and it's delightful. It's cool water. It's sounds of water all around me. It smells of moss, smells of fungi, and the people with me. And as we climb up, eventually we come to a strata changed, and there is a flat space about 2 football pitches in size. And above us, a waterfall coming straight out of the rock, falling 100 meters straight to our feet. And I look around at the beauty, look at my companions, and I'm so pleased with myself. These guys are 18, I am 68, I have managed it, I've kept up with them. And without a further thought, I rush to the waterfall. Oops, I forgot, or I didn't know. As the water rushes down, it entraps air. And there is a wind, a cold wind coming down. And as it hits the floor, the cold wind spreads. So there is me rushing straight into a cold, howling gale. And before I know what's happening, my watch is off, my hat is off, and my hat entraps my glasses, and my glasses are off. And now I realize I am really in trouble. Without my glasses, I'm half blind. It's really a mountain rescue situation that I created. But the lads that were with me refused to be serious about it, refused to criticize me, and what they did, They put my feet in footholds. They put my hands in handholds. They climbed around me to make sure I don't fall off backwards. And with good humor, being nice to me all the time, they walked me down for hour after hour after hour, down the waterfall. And then down the path and back home. We had a good day, didn't we? They said. So that was one present that I got, was just love in Ecuador. The next year, I went to India. I went to a little village on the Deccan Plateau. It's a very poor part of India, very dry. People living in mud huts, working all hours that they can. And near me there was a temple. Not what you see on tourist sites. It was another hut, okay? And from the hut there was singing. The singing was a lead and response, and I heard there were different voices leading, and eventually I had to see what's going on. So I crept up to the temple, not wanting to disturb people. I hid behind the wall, and I thought I'll stay here the evening and just listen. It didn't work out. Dr. Len, come and join us. So embarrassed, I joined them. And I found myself in a room, I guess about the size of this room, with a niche in which there were gods looking at us, and a dozen people sitting on the floor. And they were people I had met by then, and I knew them. There was the village carpenter. There was the chai seller that would sell chai early in the morning when people were going to work in the fields. There was the woman that carried vegetables around the village. And there were the agricultural workers, the peasants, that would drive past me every day on the back of a tractor. And here they were in their working clothes still. They've done a day's work, and now they were singing. Fabulous voices, passing the song from color to choir, from color to color, men passing to women, to my surprise, women back to men. I stood and listened, open-mouthed, not literally, but yeah. I went many times again to that village, and my highlight was always walking into the temple, watching the mixture of spirituality and banter and good humor in between the songs. That was a gift from India that I'll always treasure. I went to India most years, and my last trip was due on 19th March 2020. On 13th March, India closed its borders. Why? Yes, COVID, of course. So that was the end of going to India. It was the end of my medical career, except for one more job that was perhaps the scariest of them all. A month or so after the start of COVID, I, like many other doctors, retired doctors, was invited to join the NHS 111 COVID line. So our job was to listen to patients, to reassure if possible, but also to decide what they need. So just imagine 4 o'clock in the morning, Ruth asleep, the world asleep, but I am sitting in front of my computer. And on the screen is a list of names. If I click on any of these names, I'll be connected to somebody who has COVID symptoms. I have to decide rapidly whether this person has mild symptoms and can be left at home, or whether he needs to be in hospital. Now, at that time, COVID was still a puzzle. What we did know is that people can rapidly go downhill. So, if I leave him at home and he deteriorates, and he's then not able to communicate, he may die. If I send him to hospital, I will be occupying one of the scarce beds. Somebody may die. So that job was really the end of my medical career. I was pleased when I could get off that COVID line eventually. And what do I do now?
You sit down. So it's my daring to dare. So I came into all these stories, and I think it could be why, after I finished paid work, I became a storyteller. And as you heard, there were many, many, many stories. And in the middle of these stories, there was a name. The name was Basia. It's a short form in Polish for Barbara. Now, Basia was Len's mother's best friend from before the war. They ran a dance school together. And I heard stories about her, this Catholic woman who became a partisan, got Jews out of the ghetto, and hid Len's cousin from the age of 6 all the way through the war. And I knew she was still alive, so I wanted to meet her. So that's how the two of us went to Poland in 2001. And I think we were both surprised to be going, because for Len, the last time he left Poland was 1949, and never wanted, never expected to go to Poland again, never thought about it. Life is going forward. For me, I was the first generation after the war, and I was told, as a little Jewish girl, that Poland, who needs it? It's a blood-soaked, anti-Semitic land. Who would want to go there? But we did. And we met with Basia. And I can remember the very first time, because we've been many, many times, and I've fallen in love with Poland, that I can remember walking into a very elegant Polish apartment with a big wooden table in the middle with a lace tablecloth and the best china and the most beautiful foods. And round the table was the family. And in the middle was a little grey-haired old lady with the brightest blue eyes you ever did see. And this was Basha. And when she saw us, she got up and she tottered over to Len, lifted her hand to his face and said, "Oh, Narchik, little Leonard." She hadn't seen her best friend's little boy since he was 2. And here he was, 64. And there were many, many stories, all in Polish, and Len speaks fluent Polish. And every few minutes or so, he'd say, "Just a moment," and he'd translate for me. And there was once that Basha was talking, and the hairs on the back of my neck went up. I said, Len, what's she saying, what's she saying? And she was talking about the time between the wars, which were very good for her and her friends. They were artists, dancers, part of the artist class. And she said it didn't matter to her if her friends were gay or Jewish or whatever. A human being is a human being. And she said, a flower is not a rat. And that sentence, that phrase, I grabbed it. And a few years later, and it's still what I do, is a one-woman show called A Flower's Not a Rat, with true stories and folk tales and some Yiddish singing. And it's got laughter in it. It's also got very hard stories. And the middle of that, the thread that runs through this show is the importance of doing the right thing, not the easy thing. So important in the world we're living in, to do the right thing, not the easy thing. And one of the songs in this show is called Die ganze Welt, the whole world. The whole world is nothing but a little story. The whole world is nothing but a little play. It's a song about broken shoes, a song that never ends, and a song about hunger and need, and a song about a little piece of bread. Die ganze Welt ist wie mich am Meißele. Die ganze Welt ist mir ein schweres Spiel. Die ganze Welt ist mir ein schweres Meißele. Die ganze Welt ist mir ein schweres Spiel. Ein Ballade fin zerrissene Schick. Ein Ballade, wo's endlich sech nicht. Ein Ballade fin hinge in Neut. Ein Ballade fin a Stickel Bräut. Die ganze Welt ist mir ne schwer Meißele. Die ganze Welt ist mir ne schwer Spiel. Die ganze Welt ist mir ne schwer Meißele. Die ganze Welt ist mir ne schwer Spiel. Ein Ballade fin zerrissene Schick. Ein Ballade, wo's endlich sech nicht. Ein Ballade, fin hinge in Neut. Ein Ballade, fin a Stickel Bräut. So, we are 159 years old. I am 72.
And I am 87.
And we can't do a show about this part of our lives without talking about the door. We can see the door in this age. It's not here, but it is there. So a small story about death. There was a very rich man who lived in Marrakesh. And he had a servant who went down to the marketplace every day to buy things for the house, to buy the spices and the food and whatever was needed. And one day he was in the marketplace doing his shopping, and he looked over the other side of the square and he saw standing there death. And death turned to him and waved. So this servant, he was terrified. He ran back to his master and said, "I've seen death in the marketplace, and he waved at me. He's coming to get me. I need to run." So the master said, "I have a house in Samarkand. Take my best horse and go to my house, and you'll be safe." So that's what the servant did. He got on the horse and he rode and he rode and he rode. He rode over days and nights and days. It's a long, long way to Samarkand, but eventually he got there. He went to the house. He opened the door, went in, shut the door, put the bolts on, sat down in the chair and breathed a sigh of relief. And then there was a knock on the door. The servant unbolted the door and opened it, and there stood death. And the servant said, "What are you doing here? I saw you in Marrakesh, and you waved at me." And death said, "Yes, I waved at you because I was surprised to see you in Marrakesh. I have an appointment with you today in Samarkand." So, there is a reality about what happens as you get older. And what I say is, I refuse to let my life be any smaller than it needs to be. And there is a needs to be. Things happen to our bodies and to our lives. So that's how we live. So, it just remains to say, too old.
Too old.
So, the end, or
is it?
the end, or
is it?
Thank you so much to both of you. That was fantastic. Absolutely lovely. Does anybody want to say anything about what this wonderful show has been about and what it means to you? We've just got a few minutes, so if anybody wants to respond, I can bring this microphone.
or if you've got any questions.
Yes, or questions. Yeah. I'm sorry, Ruth. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Ruth and Len, that was so beautiful. My heart's just so full now. I wanted to ask how it came about that you created this beautiful piece.
Shall I answer? Yeah, okay. So, as you heard in the story, Len stopped being a doctor. And so what happens when you've spent your whole life doing the thing that you love? And I had become a storyteller. So I suggested that Len go on a storytelling course, which he loved. And he ended up going, is this okay for me to do? Yeah. I ended up going on this course called Storytelling Beyond Words, It's a 3-month full-time course in East Sussex in the International School of Storytelling. And what you have to do is, there's 2 months which you're learning the craft, and then the last month is spent doing a project. And it's about storytelling to make a difference in the world. That's why we're doing this. So Len chose to do something about getting older. Other people did things about the role of women in this society, or about racism, or the environment. Quite a few people did the environment. So this was creating a show that was showing something different than what you normally hear about getting older. It's both joyous and challenging. And so it came out of this, that this has definitely got a purpose of showing a different version of getting old than what you normally get.
I entirely concur with the speaker before me. And in addition, we wanted to have a go at doing a performance out of the story, a performance between 2 people. So we worked on it, and we nearly scratched our eyes occasionally, trying to make it come our way. And here it is, we've brought it to you.
Any more questions or thoughts?
I was just intrigued by the concept of the door, because I think that is something that everyone sees in their lives as they get older. And how you view, what is your view through the door now?
We have been very lucky, both of us. We're healthy. We're well off. We haven't got other people that desperately need us. So it's important we have a privileged perspective. But yes, things change. I have used a stick to come here. One day, I may be a dribbling old man who has half lost his marbles. What do you think, Ruth?
Well, as you heard in my story, I had death very early when I was 3.5. So what I think is that this is the only truth, is that we're born and we die. Something happens in between. And as you're getting older, that becomes clearer. And this is why Len wanted to get rid of me, or back in those days, because why should I have to deal with that? But it's real, and there's something very powerful about it. And there's a loss and a tragedy, but there's something about being able to face that truth that is about being alive, and that time and the moment and what we do becomes more important and more precious. So I think you don't have to wait until you're old to be able to do that, but it's a great question. Thank you.
And I think there are... oh, sorry, anybody else? Yeah. No, after you, because I was going to finish it off, so no, go for it.
Hiya. So one of my favourite bits of your performance was when you talked about hiding when Len came in and then sitting under the table together. So I was wondering if you could tell us about more funny, silly things like that you did together. That
well,
was...
I can tell you afterwards. I can tell you lots of stories.
Okay.
But I think one of the saving graces, one of the things I'm very pleased about, and there was always a struggle for me as well when I was meant to be a grown-up, is I never lost that sense of play, how important play is, how important laughter is, and that play is not superficial, it's serious, and the way we lead our lives can be playful, and there's a lot of it in this place here, in Chapel FM. And it's one of the things, I wasn't deliberately making a test to see if he would play with me. But one of the things that we said quite early on is that, okay, he's 63 and I'm coming up 50. We're also 2 and 3 and 7 and 15 and 20. We're all those ages at the same time. And that's how we meet each other. So we laugh together, but we also fight. I mean, we can fight. But that's play, because there's a deep love that's at the bottom of it. But I will tell you stories afterwards.
And sometimes we ask one another, oh, how old are you just now?
I'd also want to say, I mean, there are a lot of negative images of getting older and of old age, but I think what comes across from what you just gave us was a wonderful sense of the present and celebrating the present and what's here now. I think that's a very moving, fantastic thing, so thank you for that. And I love the idea of the door. I'm not going to give away anything about the theme of next year's Writing on Air, but for me, it's something about transitions and about doors and going through and welcoming in. So it was very suggestive to me and resonant for me when you said that, Ruth. So I think another massive round of applause for these two lovely people, please. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.